Hi, my name is Colby. Welcome to another one of my 10-minute YouTube tutorials. In our tutorial today, we're going to learn how to paint streaming sun rays coming out from behind a mountain ridge. So first up in our rays of sunlight sunset sky tutorial is to paint the sky. So the first step to painting the sky is getting your paper wet with clean water. So I'm just taking some clean water and laying down a wash on my paper. I used masking tape to tape down my paper to keep it taut and to mimic the stretching effect so that my paper doesn't buckle quite as much. Okay, so I have my water down, and now the next step is to paint the sky. So I'm going to start with the yellow of the sky. So what we know is light, when depicted in paintings, really is white. And I mean in real life. So the lightest part, the brightest part of your painting should be white. And so knowing that, I'm going to make my, like this corner where the streaming, like around here is where the sun is going to be. So knowing that, I'm just going to kind of paint with my yellow around where I want that white to be. And then I'm going to build off of that. So I'm doing the basic yellow, pink, and this purple color, Paraline Violet is what it's called, with a little bit of indigo at the top. No, actually, I changed my mind. I'm just doing Paraline Violet at the top. And this is a pretty classic sunset color combination that I use a lot, this yellow, pink, purple, because yellow and purple are complementary colors, which means that when you blend them together, they do not look very nice. So I like to use a buffer color in between them, and pink works pretty well. This is Quin Rose, and it blends really well with this Paraline Violet, and it blends well with the yellow. So that's why it's a good buffer color to have between the two. See, when mixed with the yellow, it just kind of creates this fun coral color. I'm using yellow ochre for the yellow. So I'm not really paying too much attention. I don't really care about having a super smooth gradient. Having textures like this in a sunset sky can almost look like clouds sometimes. So, okay. But now I want to make sure that this yellow is going to blend in with the white. So I'm just going to take some water, some clean water, and blend in that yellow layer just a little bit more with this white corner here that I have. And add just a bit more yellow coming out of here. And then we're going to add the sunbeams in just a minute. Okay. So now the mountain is going to come, the mountain that's going to like cap off the the streaming sunlight right here is going to be kind of low right here and then come up right here and cut off the sky like that. And so we want the sunbeams to be coming out this way. And so the way that I'm going to create these sunbeams is by taking a clean paintbrush, getting it wet. So I'm dipping it in my water, getting it wet, and then before painting, I'm going to just touch it to my paper towel. So let me demonstrate. I'm getting it wet, and then I'm just going to touch it to my paper towel like that to get off any excess water. So now it's a clean, damp paintbrush. And with the damp paintbrush, I'm going to paint thin lines coming out right here. Okay, so with my clean, damp paintbrush, I'm going to start in the white right here, and I'm going to just paint a line through the wet sky. It's imperative that the sky is wet while I'm doing this. And I'm going to paint as if there's some kind of circle right here, like this is where the sun is. So I don't want the lines to just be willy-nilly. I do want them to be some kind of, circular direction. My lines don't have to reach all the way out to the edge of the painting. They can just stop kind of right there, and then I'm going to do one last one like that. And then I'm just going to go over the lines one more time so that the white really comes through. The way that this works is the water that's on the paintbrush acts kind of like a paint remover. So it's removing the paint and leaving behind these lines that we are trying to make with the paintbrush. And it only works with a damp paintbrush, because if it had like droplets of water on it, it would not be quite as controllable. You wouldn't see those really thin lines that are coming out. Instead, it would come out more like cloudy. The water would make more of a texture. So we don't want a texture here. We want these controlled lines. So there are lines. And as you can see, let me zoom in a little. They are pretty white, and it only worked this way using the wet on wet technique because the paint remover is showing the white paper underneath, right? And that only happens because the paint was still wet. All right, so now I have dried this sky, and you can see the white lines from the sun rays are still there. And so now I'm going to paint my mountaintop. I'm using, for the mountain, I'm going to use Payne's Gray. It really just needs to be like a dark-ish color. And I'm going to start from the bottom and just kind of form a loose mountain landing just underneath the sun, so that you can see the sun is kind of peeking out from behind that mountain. And in order to really contrast the sun, because this piece isn't so much about the mountain, right, as it is about the sun. In order to really contrast the sun, I'm going to make sure that the mountain is pretty pigmented, pretty dark. And the dark mountain against the sun is going to emphasize the streaming, the light even more. And now as a final step, just take a smaller paintbrush and we're going to add just a few trees to this mountaintop. So you can do like really detailed individual trees if you want. For these kinds of pieces, I usually just draw some lines and then loosely draw lines over the trunks like this. Because generally when you're looking at mountains far away like this, like just in real life, the trees are hard to make out anyway. They just kind of look like sticks sticking up from off of the mountaintop. And so with painting, I find if there's a way to make a shape work just as well as if I had taken, 3 or 4 minutes on each of these trees to make them look super realistic, I would way rather go with the shape that can take me a few seconds instead of minutes for all of them. So, maybe that's lazy, but that's the way that I like to do watercolor landscapes. So I'm just going to paint a few more down here. You want to be careful, even if you're using a small paintbrush. If you have too much water on the paintbrush, then your thin trunks won't be so thin. They'll be pretty thick. So just keep an eye out for that. And whenever I paint these trees, I always try to take care to make the trees different sizes so that they're not all the same height, they're not all the same width, because once again, that's what trees look like in real life. They're not all the same. And so the imperfect trees are really is what it's going to help make your piece look even more realistic. And I'm not going to do very many up here. Maybe just a couple. Because once again, I still want the sun to be the main event here. So I don't want the trees to completely take over. But a couple trees in front right here as a silhouette can help to showcase the streaming sunbeams even more. So, and that wraps it up. So now for the tape peel. And that wraps up this 10-minute tutorial. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.